So we're going to talk today about lesson 7.8, factoring polynomials completely, which will include factoring by grouping and maybe solving some real life problems if the video doesn't get too long. So when you're factoring by grouping, you're putting groups of numbers together, and grouping in mathematics is basically putting parentheses around something. That makes that a group of numbers. So take a look at these two right here. What do they have in common that you can pull out? Well, I can pull out an x squared from both of those, right? So x squared divided goes into x cubed, and that just leaves me with x. And then the same thing here, it just leaves me with the 3. On this one, you have the 2, and you can pull that out of both of these because 2 goes into 6 as well. So pull out the 2, and you're left with x plus 3. And then I want you to notice that you have an x plus 3 and an x plus 3. Well, that right there is what they have in common after you pull them out. So x squared plus 2 times x plus 3. And you're done factoring. It's actually kind of fun. So sometimes you need to regroup things. If you take a look at this, you can actually see that there's nothing they have in common. And these have in common an x. So you might be ready to go, oh, okay, I can pull an x out. But then what? Because you have nothing over here to pull out. So when I say pull out, I'm talking about factoring, something that you can pull out of the equation itself. And I'm going to just rearrange it for a second so that I can have an x in common here at least. And then I'm going to rearrange this so it's y plus xy. So all I did was flip these two. So when you're adding or subtracting, you can do that and not a big deal. So now I can group them. And when I do, I will have some things that I can pull out of here, such as x, so you're left with x plus 1. Remember, this is still 1 times x, even if we don't write that 1 right there. And this one, you can pull out the y, so you get 1 plus x. So x plus y, x plus 1. And you're done. Remember that 1 plus x and x plus 1 are the same exact thing. You can do either x plus 1 or 1 plus x. You're going to get the same result. So take a look at the next two examples. You have a grouping and a grouping. And in front of this grouping, I want to put a little 1 right here. Okay, I'm doing that on purpose because I want to leave something there in a second. So a squared comes out, leaves me with a plus 3. And then look at this. This is already a plus 3. So what do I pull out of there? What is the one thing I can multiply with that won't affect the problem? It's called an identity. So it's actually 1 times a is a, and 1 times 3 is 3. So it's only 1 that I could pull out of there. And you have plus 1, a plus 3, a squared plus 1, a plus 3. And you're done. Easy peasy, especially the more you do it. So if you look at this, nothing in common here, right? Nothing in common here except for the y. So it's kind of deceiving in a way. So what you're looking at doing here is actually rearranging again so that you have something in common to pull out. And you can play with this. I've done this for a long time, but you can play with this and kind of figure out how do you go about grouping these things so that it makes sense to you. But notice these both had a 2, so that was kind of a gimme. This is y when you pull it out, and then it's y plus x. This is 2 and x plus y. And remember that x plus y is the same as y plus x. X plus y is the same as y plus x. So I'm just going to do y plus 2 times x plus y. And we're done. And that is basically in a nutshell factoring by grouping. And the more you practice it, the better you get, as with most things. So let's take a look at and just do a quick review of some of the things we've covered in this chapter. So we covered factoring. When we take 3 times x and 2 times 3 times x, and you're going to pull out the 3x, in both of these and be left with x plus 2. So you're pulling out the 3x, and then you're left with x plus 2. And then we did the one where we ignore this, and we take the square root, and we take the square root. So we get x plus 2 and square it. This is a plus because it's a plus right here. And then this right here, we're actually going to need to use our little method that I taught you. And you're going to get -6, -5, -6, and 1. So when you divide by the 3, you get -2 over 1, and you get, well, this pretty much stays 1/3. So 1/3, which is what the 3x plus 1 and the x minus 2 comes from. So last one of these. Notice you can pull an x out of all of this, but that's not what we want to do here. We're going to factor by grouping. Well, we couldn't have pulled an x out of the whole thing. We're going to factor by grouping, so we're going to get x squared, and then we're going to have left x plus 1, x squared plus 1. Pull out a -4, which is going to change that sign, and you're going to be left with x squared plus 1. And that's where this comes from. X squared plus 1, x squared plus 1, and the x minus 4. That should just be x. Sorry. Okay, let's try some. When you're factoring completely, it means as much as you can go, as far as you can go without actually needing the quadratic formula. So if you take a look at this problem, they all have an x. So I know I can pull that out. And they're all divisible by 3. So I know I can pull that out. So once I do that, I get x squared minus 2x, plus 2x minus 6. And that's as far as I can go with that. I don't have two numbers that multiply to equal -6 but add up to equal 2. So recognize that that's as far as you can go with something. And this one, 7 goes into 28, so that's handy. And they both have x's, so this is 4 of them here, and there's 2 of them here. So 7x squared can come out, which leaves me with x squared minus 4. But we're actually factoring completely here, so please recognize that this is the difference of squares. So x plus 2, x minus 2, and now you're done. This one's a little different. You actually have to make this equal to 0 or put everything over to one side of the equation before you can go ahead and factor anything. So we're going to subtract this 10x from both sides. When we do over here, it cancels and becomes 0. When we do over here, we just add to our problem. So 2x cubed plus 8x squared minus 10x equals 0. So 2x x squared plus 4x minus 5 equals 0. So I moved this over by subtracting, and then I went ahead and factored out the 2x. Now I'm going to see if I can actually factor this out. So two numbers that multiply to equal -5 but add to equal 1. So 2x, x plus 5, and x minus 1. Okay, let's keep going and try a few more. This is one of those things where practice is where we need to be as far as getting problems a little more fine-tuned. So pulling out a 3 here and an x. So what are you left with? X squared minus 4. And this is again the difference of squares. So minus 2. X plus 2, x minus 2. So this one here, notice they're all even. And the first number even is a 2. So I'm going to pull that out, and they all have a y. So I'm going to pull that out. So 2y, you get y squared minus 6y plus 9. And then recognize that this is y minus 3 squared. Done. Remember, if I cross that out right there, I take the square root, I put a subtraction sign between them, and I'm good to go. So recognize that as perfect square trinomial. So over here you have an m that is in common with all of them. Pull it out. Oops, I don't want the m there. Sorry, but wrote an m, didn't need it. And I can rewrite this as m minus 4, m plus 2, and you're good to go. So this is all factoring that we've done before, so I'm not going through all the steps with that. Hopefully you understand that you can actually do the 8, negative 2, negative 4, 2, and you know where this is coming from. All right. When you're solving the equation, it needs to be equal to 0 to do that. And the other thing you need to know is factor it out completely because it makes it easier. So notice they all have a w in common. I'm going to pull that w out so I can get w squared minus 8w plus 16 equal to 0. See if you can factor this. You can, because it's a perfect square trinomial, which is w minus 4 squared equals 0. And then you can solve it. W equals 0 or w minus 4 equals 0. So w equals 4. And those are your two results. This one, once you pull out that x, you're left with x squared minus 25. That's awesome, because these we can do as a difference of squares. Plus 5 minus 5, x, all equal to 0. So x is going to equal 0, or x can equal negative 5, or x can equal positive 5. Any of those could make that true. Okay, last one of these types, and then we're going to do a couple story problems real quick. So c squared minus 7c plus 12 equals 0. So if I factor this out a little bit more, I get c minus 4, c minus 3 equals 0. So it's either c is going to equal 0, 4, or 3. Any one of those can make that true. If I plug a 4 in here, 4 minus 4 is 0. Multiply by anything else, that's 0. There you go. All right, this next couple problems is a little more involved. So I'm going to take my time with it a little, but also it's going to be a little longer than we're used to. So volume, remember, is length times width times height. So start there, because it asks you to find the length, the width, and the height of the terrarium. So I know one thing. I know that the volume is equal to 4608. So if I multiply these three numbers together, it equals 4608. I know that. So 4608 is equal to the length times the width times the height. And I want to figure that out. So it gives me this information. It gives me the length as 36 minus w. The width is w. And the height as w plus 4. And I know this is all equal to 4608. So when you finish multiplying this out, you will end up with 32w squared plus 144w minus w to the third equals 4608. What I want to do here is subtract this 4608. So I'm going to do that. And at the same time, I'm going to regroup this. So I'm going to have negative w to the third plus 32w squared plus 144w minus 4608, all I did was subtract this to move it to the other side, equals 0. Now, I have not taught you how to solve for cubics, so we're going to actually look at grouping this a little bit. So we're going to group these, and we're going to factor that way. Makes life so much easier. So if I pull out a negative w squared, it's going to leave me with w minus 32. So I want you to take a look at this. This was a plus, but once I pull out a negative, it makes it negative, because a negative times a negative is a positive, and that's what your result would have been if you were multiplying those. And you have 144 that you can pull out of here, and you get w minus 32. So you get negative w squared plus 144 times w minus 2. So, sorry, 32. There's a minus sign in there. You can't see it now. Equals 0. So if I pull a negative out again from here, I just pull it out, it leaves me with w squared minus 144 and w minus 32. So this is actually still not done. I'm still going here. So remember, this is w plus 12 and w minus 12. So you end up with w plus 12, w minus 12, and w minus 32. What does that mean? Well, that means that my results could be negative 12, not likely, because you can't have a negative with, right? So that's not going to be an answer. It could be w equals 12, that could be an answer, or w equals 32. Once you plug these back in and you multiply them, you'll figure out that both of these are answers. So if you actually do this and plug this in, you will see that both of these are answers. I don't even know if I can show you this. I don't think I have enough light. There we go. If you multiply these back out, you will see that both of them are 4608. Okay, so this one is similar. Volume equals length times width times height. 72 equals x times x minus 1 times x plus 9. 72 equals x squared minus x times x plus 9. I'm just multiplying it out slower this time. And when you're done with all that, you will get x cubed plus 9x squared minus x squared minus 9x minus 72. Combine your like terms here, right here, like terms. X cubed plus 8x squared minus 9x minus 72 equals 0. And x squared, we're grouping now. X squared comes out. You are left with x plus 8. And grouping here, pull out your negative 9. You are left with x plus 8. So x squared minus 9 times x plus 8 equals 0. Remember, this is x plus 3, x minus 3, x plus 8. Set each one of them equal to 0, and you will get x equals negative 3, x equals 3, x equals negative 8. Well, the distance of anything can never be negative, so it eliminates those answers. If you're looking for the dimensions of this book, you're going to plug them back into this. So 3 times 3 minus 1, which is 2, times 3 plus 9, which is 12. And your dimensions are length 3 feet, width 2 feet, and height 12 feet. Okay, this is probably one of the longer videos I probably will ever do because it required a couple more explanations than usual. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.